Gopijana Balaba Jayo Giri Varadari Jayo Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Jayo Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Jayo Braja Janaranjana Jayo Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Jayo Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Gopijana Balaba Jayo Giri Varadhari Jayo Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Jayo Braja Janaranjana Jayo Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jana Palapa Jayo Giri Varadhari Jayo Giri Varadhari Yashodanandana Jayo Brata Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Vihare Jayo Jayo Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Vihare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shila Prabhupada ki Jaya Om Vishnu Pat Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sata A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam namaskritam Naram chaiva narotamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam udirayet. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, Maharaj Rahugana meets Jada Bharat, Text 18. Tat Bruhya Sango Jadavaniguta Vijnana Viryo Vicharasya Paraha Vachamsi Yoga Gratitani Sadho Nanakshamante Manasapi Bhetum Tat Bruhya Sango Jadavaniguta Vijnana Viryo Vicharasya Para Vachamsi Yoga Gratitani Sadho Nanakshamante Manasapi Bhetum Tat Bruhi Asango Jadavaniguda Vijnana Viryo Vicharasya Para Vachamsi Yoga Gratitani Sadho Nanakshamante Manasapi Bhetum. Kuchatavan Miguda Charasikoda Mataji. Tat, therefore, Bruhi, please speak, Asangaha, who have no association with the material world. Jada Bhat, appearing like a deaf and dumb man. Niguda, completely hidden. Vijnana Vidya, who have full knowledge of the spiritual science and are thus very powerful. Vicharasi, you are moving. Apara, who possesses unlimited spiritual glories. Vachamsi, the words uttered by you. Yoga Gratitani, bearing the complete meaning of mystic yoga. Sadhu, O great saintly person, not, naha, of us, shamante, are able, manasa api, even by the mind, petum, to understand the analytical study. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My dear sir, it appears that the influence of your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. Factually, you are bereft of all material association and fully absorbed in the thought of the Supreme. Consequently, you are unlimitedly advanced in spiritual knowledge. Please tell me why you are wandering around like a dullard. O great saintly person, you have spoken words approved by the yogic process. But it is not possible for us to understand what you have said. Therefore, kindly explain it. Purport. Saintly people like Jata Bharat do not speak ordinary words. Whatever they say is approved by great yogis and those advanced in spiritual life. That is the difference between ordinary people and saintly people. The listener must also be advanced to understand the words of such exalted, spiritually advanced people as Jada Bharat. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, not to others. Lord Krishna specially selected Arjuna for instruction in spiritual knowledge because Arjuna happened to be a great devotee and confidential friend. Similarly, great personalities also speak to the advanced, not to Shudras, Vaishyas, women, or unintelligent men. Sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the benefit of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga, has given us a very nice instrument, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. The general mass of people, although Shudras and less, can be purified by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. Then they can understand the exalted philosophical statements of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Our Krishna consciousness movement has therefore adopted the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for the general masses. When people gradually become purified, they are instructed in the lessons of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Materialistic people like Stri, Shudra, and Dvija Bandhu cannot understand words of spiritual advancement. Yet, one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightenment. Even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. I will read the last paragraph because I missed a few words. Materialistic people like Stri, Shudra, and Dvija Bandhu cannot understand words of a spiritual advancement. Yet one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. May I have a Bhagavad Gita? I appreciate it. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakchuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vatsadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam discussion. Before I start, I ask for blessings from my superiors so we can speak on Srimad Bhagavatam. So here we were seeing in previous verses how King Rahugana is quite surprised and defeated and by Jada Bharat. He's been enlightened. He realized that he wasn't just an ordinary person. He wasn't a Jada. Jada means dull. And because the King Rahugana, he was part of the Vedic culture, he could understand that the gravity of offending a Vaishnava. So in the previous verse, he's explaining to Jadabharata how important for him is not to offend a Vaishnava. And in this verse, he will start to, in some way, he's glorifying him by letting him know that he can understand that in front of him there is a knowledge-level person, a wise sage. So he's using the word niguda. He said that although you are known as a jada, ban, as a fool, you are actually vijnana virya. You are full of knowledge, but you are asanga. You have no association with the material world at all. So he was completely self-realized. In spite of being a great learned person, he is explaining, of being a pure devotee, you are appearing like a madman or a fool. And Prabhupada points out that saintly people will never speak words that are ordinary. And sometimes Prabhupada also explains that a fool is known when he speaks. So although Jadabharata appears like a fool when he starts speaking, he understood that King Rahugana could understand that Jadabharata was an enlightened person. In the opposite way, sometimes there are personalities who appear to be very learned and very important, but when they speak, they show themselves as a fool. And this is exactly the case that is happening now. It's the King Rahugana in the next verse, he will explain what he is, that he cannot understand the word of Jadabharata. And by the way he's speaking, he's showing ignorance. And then Jadabharata will enlighten him. So although King Rahugana was in a palanquin, and he was appearing like a very great personality, and Jadabharata was looking like a fool, being unable to carry the palanquin. Actually, the opposite was the reality. Actually, the fool in this situation, of course, all the respect to King Rahugana, but he's taking the role. Actually, the role of the ignorant person is King Rahugana, and Jadabharata will show his brilliance in how wise he was. King Rahugana was expert as all kings in Vedic culture, in karma kanda, and performing his duties. But Jadabharata, from his childhood, he was unable to learn anything from his father. He even couldn't learn the Gayatri mantra. Of course, it was purposely, because he didn't want to get entangled in material activities. Because he did that as King Bharat in previous life, and he did it perfectly. So now he was only interested in going back to Godhead. So we have two personalities that are completely opposite. One is very learned in material understanding, and the other is very learned in spiritual understanding. And now they are meeting each other. Prabhupada explained also that a personality like Jadad Bharata, they don't speak to any person. Like, just giving the example, they don't speak to Shudras or Vaishyas, women. So the principle there is that they don't speak to persons who are not ready to receive the knowledge. That they may misuse that knowledge. So, but now, Jadad Bharata he will speak for the first time in Srimad Bhagavatam because he's having compassion for King Rahuvana. So I want to ask you all, just because I don't want to bore you, so if you can tell me examples of great sages who didn't follow the rule that Prabhupada is explaining regarding learned persons who don't speak to ordinary persons. Like Prabhupada said, great personalities all speak to the advanced, not to Shudras, Vaishyas, women, or unintelligent men. So, Srila Prabhupada, exactly. So he spoke to all kind of audiences, especially those who are even less than Shudras. And who else?
Lord Nityananda.
Nityananda, Pran Prabhupada. He's speaking to me sometimes, even. He's very merciful. You said Lord Nityananda. Haridas Thakur. To Jagat and Madai. Exactly. What do they speak to them? What they preach something, no?
So when you say it says speak, does Prabhupada mean like preaching or just talking?
No, not yet, because this is the next point that is coming that Prabhupada makes in the purport. I'm speaking of great personality who will give knowledge to other person who may not be qualified for that, for understanding. But this is, anyway, is a good example. Narada Muni. He's a very versatile preacher because he's preaching to personalities like Vasudeva, the father of Krishna. He also is speaking to Srila Vyasadeva, who are totally qualified for King Yudhishthira to understand the transcendental subject matters, but also he's speaking to Mrigari, the hunter. He was not even a Shudra. He was a hunter, and more in the category of Kirata, Hunindra, Pulinda, Pulkashat, persons who are out of the Vedic system.
I remember in the 7th canto, when Hiranyakashipu is telling the story of Yamaraj. Yamaraj comes as a little boy and starts telling these women about the dead body, so he's talking to women even.
Yeah, that's a very nice example also. He said Yamaraj took the form of a little boy, and he was speaking to the wife of the king who died, and they were lamenting. And he took the form of a boy because it will be easier for the ladies to accept that the knowledge. Because usually, if we are, for example, son of us, or I, whoever, explain about the soul, the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we say, I already know that. But if one of our children of the congregation comes and starts reciting verses of Bhagavad Gita, especially if he's like 4 years old, 5 or 6 years old, and he starts preaching to us, we hear very attentively, and we are charmed by that. But when another grown person says that, we say, oh, I already read Bhagavad Gita, I know that. Give me something higher. Okay, I will speak loudly. Thanks. It's distracting the song. Ashraya Prabhu.
Haridas Thakur, we were just hearing about Haridas Thakur speaking in the presence of Gopal Chakravarti, who became offensive when he heard the glories of the holy name.
He committed offense. This is a very good example of why not the knowledge should be given to anyone. Why sometimes the sages, they have to discriminate. So Haridas Thakur was speaking the glories of the holy name, but this personality was a Smarta Brahmana, but he didn't accept the glories of the holy name. As he took that as imaginary, so he committed an offense then to Haridas Thakur. So coming back to the purport. So Prabhupada first is saying that great personalities only speak to advanced personalities and not to Shudra Vaishyas, but we see that in Srimad Bhagavatam, many great personalities, even Srila Prabhupada spoke about transcendental knowledge. So therefore, Prabhupada says, sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the benefit of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga, has given us a very nice instrument, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. So there is one point when Srila Prabhupada was in Holland, Amsterdam. He has been preaching in Europe. It's like 1971. He was speaking in France and Germany, and now he was in Amsterdam, and there was a great audience of hippies, so young people. And Prabhupada told to the devotees, just do kirtan for the mass people, they cannot understand. And then he wrote a letter to the devotees explaining that this young generation of hippies, I'm paraphrasing, but more or less Prabhupada point out that although they were interested in spiritual life, they were so spoiled by bad habits that it was very difficult for them to understand, to grasp the transcendental knowledge. So therefore they need to be first exposed to kirtan, to the Sankirtan movement, and then they can buy the books if they are interested. So he said the phrase, the kirtan for the mass people and books for the intellectual. So taking the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who also he was reserved when speaking higher topics, he only would speak with great personalities like Ramananda Roy, or regarding rasa or philosophy, he will speak with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. But for the masses, he will just do the Sankirtan movement, chanting for everyone, and even embracing people and giving the transcendental love for Godhead just by touching them. It's not even arguing. That was his mystic power. So one question is, why is it dangerous to give knowledge to persons who are not qualified. Three.
Because due to their ignorance or due to their unqualification, they'll have an offensive mentality, and it'll just be detrimental to themselves. Like Gopal, he was unqualified, and so he became offensive, and he actually just hurt himself by his offensive mentality.
Can you speak loudly?
Sorry. Because if you speak to people who are unqualified or unintelligent, then due to their own ignorance and unqualifications, they'll have an offensive mentality towards the information, towards the knowledge they're receiving, and then they'll just hurt themselves by their offensive mentality, and it'll be detrimental to their own spiritual progress.
Okay, thanks. So one of the risks is that the person may become against that knowledge, or even blame the transcendental truth that he's receiving. Okay, that's one. Another, they will misuse their knowledge. Can you give an example of, if you can?
There's a story in the Panchatantra. A teacher was teaching some students. One of them was unqualified, and there was a particular mantra he taught them, how to bring someone back from the dead. So this unqualified student, because he had this knowledge, he was walking through the forest and he saw a skeleton. He didn't know what that skeleton was. So he put the bones together. It appeared to be the skeleton of a lion. So he said, I have the power to bring it back to life. And with his mantras, he brought the lion back to life. And the lion ate him up. So by misusing it.
Nice example. Thanks. Matthew, Prabhu?
One has to be submissive in order to receive transcendental knowledge. So if we're preaching to the faithless, then it can be putting people into difficulty because of what Prabhu was saying, that they can become offensive because they can't grasp the conception without chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and being submissive to that.
Yes, that may happen. So there are many risks. One more?
I just read in the Bhagavad Gita, this purport in chapter 3. Prabhupada writes that we shouldn't disturb the minds of the ignorant. And he made the point that it's simply a waste of time because it's not benefiting them, and we're wasting our time when we could be preaching to more qualified people. And then he makes the point that the devotee of the Lord is more kind than the Lord, because he will even, just like we were given those examples, like Srila Prabhupada, he'll even go as close to approaching an ignorant person and try to engage them in Krishna service. I just thought that was also an interesting point.
Yes, that's what Prabhupada is saying, that that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he said sometimes it is very risky to give philosophical instruction to ordinary people. So Prabhupada did it. He gave initiation to opportunity to everyone, mainly to grasp under certain risks. Like even there was a disciple of Srila Prabhupada who became very learned, and then he became offensive to Srila Prabhupada. He became a Sanskrit scholar, and then he started trying to get even more knowledge. Than he wasn't satisfied with Prabhupada's books, so he was trying to get more and more, and he started doing research in Vrindavan, etc. And finally, he came out with a group of books and Babajis who were against Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he started reading those books, and then he started pointing out the defects of according to him, and those Babajis, of the preaching of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Prabhupada became very upset. And also he was pointing out fault in the Sanskrit translations. And Prabhupada finally wrote a letter and he said, this devotee is like a serpent. And I don't want anyone to associate with him. So, yes.
They also use it for their own personal benefit and to control like the mass of people, like Hiranyakashipu.
Yeah.
He knows all the, the remedies for getting power. So he has this knowledge. So what does he do? He takes over in like the heavenly kingdom. So in that way, it's not good to give ordinary people this knowledge.
Yes, Hiranyakashipu is a very good example of someone who is learned, but with a motivated purpose. So he wasn't self-realized, but he had the knowledge to manipulate. So the spiritual knowledge is very powerful. It can be misused. It's such powerful that we see even the Christianity, although we may not see that this is like all transcendental knowledge, but you can get followers by developing some knowledge, and then you can use the follower for your own purpose. And that happened in all the history, in all religions. Always there will be, and there was, and there are people who may misuse that knowledge. I was thinking to bring it to us in the context of all of you, I guess you know the example of the Punar Mushiko Baba, the mouse who became a cat, and then because he was being harassed by the cat, and then he asked the sage, I want to be a cat. Then he was harassed by the dog, and then I want to be, etc. So finally he became a tiger, and then he tried to kill his master, in other words. The sage said, Punar Mushiko Baba, again become a mouse. So in the context of temple life, for example, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we are like a Jada Bharat, in the sense that we don't know anything about spiritual life, Prabhupada books, etc. So maybe it's not the comparison I'm giving is in the external, that we have to be humble. It's not because maybe Jada Bharat is not the best example I want to, but we appear as full and we are fools. It's not like Jada Bharat exactly. But when we come to temple for the first time, like one of our devotees, Brahmachari, the first time he came, he entered in the temple room with shoes. So one devotee chastised him. So he shared with us that he was feeling uncomfortable. So when you come for the first time, you feel yourself you can feel like a fool because you don't know what to do. Like everything you do is wrong. Like you want to serve more prasad, like everyone does, and then someone screams to you, "No, what are you doing? Please wash your hands." And so it looks like all our movements are like from a full person. From night to morning, we don't know even how to clean ourselves. In our context, society, before we know everything, but when we come to the association of devotees, it's like we are a newborn child, because everything that we thought that we knew, we have to relearn again. we were thinking that we were clean persons, and then we understand that we have to take a shower every morning. If you sleep more than 45 minutes, you have to take a shower. There are many like cleanliness rules for the deity worship, etc. So in dealings, like when a Maharaj came, a sannyasi, and we embrace him the first time, hey, Hare Krishna, Maharaj, like that. And then we learn, other devotee come and say, no, please be more respectful, take some distance. So the many things we have to learn. So at the beginning, we present also, if we are quite, have some common sense, we become more humble among devotees. And if we start receiving knowledge, like for example, we take a course on Vaishnava etiquette, and we start learning different things, and after a few months, we learn everything, and then how do we use that basic knowledge? We can start using for making others feel like we were feeling before. And we start chastising others. And then, worse than that, is that we start seeing faults on devotees who we were considering more advanced than us. But now, because we are receiving the same knowledge, we start thinking, actually, this devotee, he doesn't have much knowledge, he just knows only a few verses of Bhagavad Gita. And this devotee, I was thinking he was a good mridanga player. He's terrible. He's terrible. Now I know the mantras. I know he's terrible. And then we start looking for different devotees. We learn to cook, and then we start criticizing this. Actually, he doesn't know how to cook. It's like that. So the knowledge is for a person who is not have a Brahminical tendency. The knowledge goes against him, because instead of the, like Krishna explained in Bhagavad Gita, that the symptoms of knowledge is humbleness and absence of pride. But if we are learning and we are becoming more we become less humble, and we develop more pride of what we are learning, we are going in the wrong way. So that's the danger, and because many of us fit in the category of we were born as less than Shudras, so I think we need to be careful in how we process what we are learning, because what we are learning is to clean the heart. So, and become more humble. That will be the sign that we are advancing, more attached to the Vaishnava practices and not attached to think that we know something. And so, therefore, that was, I think it's coming to an end, the class. So the point I just wanted to make is that receiving knowledge, that we are receiving a great knowledge here in ISKCON, in this temple, from Prabhupada's books and from senior devotees who visit us very often, and other seniors who live here. And we can reflect on this purport. Don't take for granted that we qualify to receive the knowledge, but to think, to be careful in how we process the knowledge. What is the result of learning? If we are becoming more appreciative to devotees and to the chanting of the holy name, etc. For example, learning Srimad Bhagavatam for some person means to lose appreciation for Bhagavad Gita. It's like and then learning Chaitanya Charitamrita means decreasing his taste for Srimad Bhagavatam. So actually, everything we learn help us to develop more appreciation for basic things. Because we start others higher knowledge. What it does is to give us ways to see basic knowledge from different angles. So there is a different vision. So in the same way, the more advanced we become, we start denigrating, we may denigrate other devotees, at least mentally. So that's another way that is processing wrong the knowledge. I'm doing better my sadhana, and therefore now I'm trying to avoid, or I'm looking very despective to devotees who are having difficulties in developing or following his sadhana. I'm not developing compassion, but I'm developing like he's useless. So he has many years. In 3 years I'm more fixed than him. So like that. So we can process, see how our mentality is developing while we are learning. Like doing book distribution, which is a really important service, and Prabhupada said many ways, in many times. Also, if it's processing in the right way, like all of you are doing, you become more humble, because Sankirtan devotee means that you cannot go to Sankirtan if you are not humble, because people sometimes chastise you, etc. But if you take that I'm doing Sankirtan and therefore I am better than you, then you're processing wrong. Of course, this is not happening with our devotees here. They are so nice. So I'm saying for me, for myself. So finally, Prabhupada makes the point that his Hare Krishna, our Hare Krishna movement has therefore adopted the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for the general masses. When people gradually become purified, they are instructed in the lesson of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why we need to be exposed to the chanting. And we have the instruction of chanting 16 rounds, go to the purifying process, and we are taught to read Bhagavad Gita first and learn it nicely, then go to Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But according to our adhikara, and there are so many books nowadays, so many. Shivaram Swami wrote a book, and he touched the point that what is our adhikara to receive, because it's accessible. But what we can receive, we have to be honest with ourselves and see where we are and what we need for advancing, and not just for information is okay, but if we just focus on more new information, means that we are avoiding to work inside with the basic that may take years and years. Like here are glorified the devotees who just realize the ABC of a spiritual life. Like Jadabharat has been glorified because he just understood that he's not the body. So just what he speaks is also, for some devotee who may have read many books, they say it's basic. Or like Sri Krishna speaking in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter. So these things, if we can realize those things, we are self-realized. So it's just the ABC. Is there any comments or questions?
So in regards to giving information, you made the statement that Prabhupada said, Kirtan is for the mass of people, and books are for the intelligent. Sometimes I find on books that I can tell that somebody's not actually or at least they think it's something totally different than what the books are. I mean, they think it's like, I don't know, and regardless of how you explain it, they have their own conceptions. Or maybe they're not so interested in actually even reading the book, but they're still willing to give a donation.
Yeah, and
is it better to give everyone books like that will take a book?
Yes.
Or to be selective and only give books to those that are actually like interested in the book?
It's better to give books to everyone because we may, if we trust it just in our discrimination, then we may commit many mistakes. There are many Sankirtan stories. For example, just here in Pilsen, we were with Jai Gokulananda, another one devotee from Brazil. We were giving books, and naturally you do some discrimination when you are there, like it's just by conditions, patterns. You always, sometimes you don't offer, also you cannot offer to everyone, so you just select a little bit. But there was a lady who was carrying a cart with garbage, say like that, and I didn't think in offering the book to her, so I was speaking to other person. But then she came to me and she just asked for the perfection of yoga, and I was thinking, okay, she may want the book free, like that, maybe I can give her prasadam, but she just take money even and pay for the book, and she said that she was using the book for his children. She liked these books very much, and then she went to the other devotee and she bought a book from him. And she was really like appreciating of the spiritual knowledge, etc. And there are stories for devotees who have given books to beggars who seems to not be very knowledgeable, but they reveal to be very appreciative to Prabhupada's books. So we don't know, so it's better to give to everyone. Also, that's not exactly what is explaining here, because we are not speaking, we are giving the books. We are trying to develop attraction for the book to people. We never know. And Prabhupada also explained that people just by touching the books, they get purified. But also, we have to be careful that people don't throw out the books and the garbage. Therefore, the books are being sold for a price that people will take care of the book. At least.
Thank you for your wonderful class, brother, first of all. I've heard and even thought, and it's at points of the way that you were expressing that people may misuse the knowledge, but I haven't really heard Srila Prabhupada or other advanced devotees speak about it that way so much. So I was wondering if you could share some thoughts on why we don't see that, or if you find it somewhere. But more what I've seen is the problem is when they're given a lot of knowledge but they're not properly engaged in using the knowledge, then it becomes poisonous. But when you give a lot of knowledge and people are very heavily engaged in the process of purification, the same problem doesn't occur. We can see that practically in our own lives. You just know a bunch of stuff, but you're not actually serving. So, from what I see from what Srila Prabhupada did was he gave a vast amount of knowledge, but he at the same time encouraged people to be, 12 hours a day doing Sankirtan and other things like that. So.
That's a very nice point. Srila Prabhupada was giving engagements to everyone, so there is a balance always, like receiving the knowledge and applying the knowledge. So therefore there are all the angas of devotional service that are being practiced, especially the 5 main angas. But also services, like different services. So there is a way to digest the knowledge. Although Srila Prabhupada, I haven't heard much of, like you mentioned, of saying that we shouldn't give knowledge because people are not qualified, except for these quotes, because he was speaking actually in his way of preaching, he would preach in such a way that people get the ABC of Bhagavad Gita, but he also will give many higher knowledge. But when speaking especially of rasa, like the Encanto of Srimad Bhagavatam, yes, Srila Prabhupada was very specific in that this knowledge is only for qualified people, and he even became very upset in many instances, like LA with the Gopi Baba Club. This in the Transcendental Diary of Harisari Prabhu is explained what happened. But Prabhupada said in that he made a meeting because some devotees were trying to, they were just reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, just only, I think was Ramananda Roy conversation with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that they were focusing in the discussion of who is more higher, like the gopis are higher than Mother Yashoda, like that, and Prabhupada chastised them. And after that, he said, because the devotees put the argument that, well, okay, but we are reading your books, Prabhupada. We are not reading Babaji books from other, or even from other Gaudiya, other Sampradaya, or other spiritual master from the Vaishnavas, Sampradaya. We are just reading your books. And Prabhupada, he said, my books are like a pharmacy. Like there are many drugs in the pharmacy, but you cannot take all. Doesn't mean that you take all. So you have to take according to prescription. And then he said also, first deserve and then desire. So, but that in the context of, for the audience of devotees who wanted to, Prabhupada said, jump to higher topics that may not apply to their realization. So you can understand theoretically, but if you start trying to apply, you make a mess. So the things sometimes just to understand like Nectar of Devotion, sometimes you understand the categories, all these things, but if you try to, for example, practice Raganuga Bhakti, so you cannot read that because it's there, and understand what does it mean. But if you try to apply it without prescription, then you can make a mess. Or if you start advising others like that. So in that way. So thank you for Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki.